friends, tell me something good. Share something good that has happened today or maybe yesterday. Tell me something good. You got anything? Yeah, Vicki.
USA winning in overtime for hockey against Canada. We got the goal.
That's right. That is good news. What else? Christine.
My daughter wanted to learn crochet and started with a really hard pattern to give these two little puppies to her cousin who's having a baby. The showers this weekend. And we got them done this week.
Woo!
All right.
Nicely done.
It's a miracle.
It is a miracle. It's another miracle. We have the wedding of Cana and crocheting. Excellent. I saw a hand over here. Yeah, Mary.
An awesome Brandy Carlisle concert
Woo!
last night.
Heard it was good. Yeah, Amy.
Where they donated, I think, a big concert, $500,000 for legal defense for him.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. Whew. That's a feel good. That feels good. Yeah, Amy.
So my oldest son shared this morning, shared my organization that I donate to in his name. That organization was able to open up a NICU in, what is it, Sierra Leone or somewhere? Anyway, and so this little podcast, was about all babies that were born that very first day at the hospital, and anyway.
Good news. Others, yeah. Yay, so your friend's back in school. That's wonderful. Yeah.
We had a really nice double date with a couple friends last night.
Hey, good news. Any other good news to share? Yeah, what do you got, Nora?
I got 100 on my math quiz.
Yay, 100 on the math quiz. That's a big deal. Yeah. There is good in the world. We just need to be reminded that there is still good in the world. The term gospel or good news comes from the Greek translation euangelion. Eu meaning good, and gelion meaning message or news. In the time of Jesus, euangelion wasn't primarily a religious term as it was an imperial one. When a Roman emperor won a decisive battle, a herald would run into the city throughout the streets shouting, Euangelion, Euangelion, the good news of victory. The birth of an emperor or his ascension to the throne was also described as good news for the world. While the New Testament was written in Greek, Jesus and his disciples were steeped in the Hebrew scriptures. The concept of bringing good news appears prominently in the texts, like the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah 52, verse 7. How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news, or basar in Hebrew, who proclaim peace. In this context, the good news was the end of exile, the announcement that God was returning to reign and to rescue God's people. Through Jesus' preaching and teaching, the early Jesus followers began subverting the Roman Empire by making a bold claim. They were essentially saying, Rome says the emperor is the source of peace and victory, but we have a different good news about a different king. Thus the setup for Holy Week. And yet this term good news continues to be weaponized or co-opted by Christian nationalists and those who appear to know Jesus more than you and me. Why should Christian nationalists get to define what good news looks like, especially when we have our own experience and call with Jesus? How do you define or describe the good news? Jesus' ministry was truly meant to be good, as in beneficial, maybe even joyful and delightful. Gospel of John, the good news of John, Jesus' ministry begins with the wedding at Cana, whereas the synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, begin with the temptation of Jesus. So we're taking a little different route in this season of Lent and beginning with the miracle story. The miracle story that unfolds in the Gospel of John is one that shares joy, keeps the good vibes flowing, literally, and when paired with the parable of the mustard seed, continues to emphasize the element of surprise. Jesus' teachings were inherently subversive, and revisiting them time and again should continually upend our assumptions and internal biases. Beginning with the wedding at Cana, instead of the temptation, also reminds us that there still can be good news in Lent, even when the journey is long and hard, 40 days long and hard. Jesus told the waitstaff, fill those water jars, or fill the jars with water. And according to Debbie Blue, pastor emerita of House of Mercy in St. Paul, writes, quote, Jesus tells the servants to fill the containers that hold the water used for purifying. It's an interesting choice. You're at a big event, and there are a lot of people, and it's time when everyone is sensitive to bacteria or H1N1, COVID, measles, and then there's a cholera outbreak. Something that makes people want to be careful about washing their hands. Say you're part of a religious subculture where this is considered very important. Washing hands is the polite thing. Jesus fills up the containers used for purifying, the equivalent of filling our pump bottles of hand sanitizer, with wine. Not just any wine, but good wine. Jesus takes an important aspect in his culture and fills it with wine, gallons of it. Many scholars have said that this text speaks of Jesus' generosity and abundance. It speaks of good news, which includes joy as well. Lindsay Scott, in her commentary on this text entitled Wine Often Marks Major Life Moments, writes that rather than serving mediocre wine near the close of the wedding when celebrant senses are less keen, Jesus brings a surprising abundance of fine wine. We may draw parallels to God's work in the world. The beginning of Jesus' ministry marks the start of God's work in the world that has been long awaited. The story leads us to expect surprisingly good and abundant things to come as Jesus begins his ministry. Starting the story with the provision of wine at a wedding feast, we can see Jesus' mission as continuing God's work in the world that provides hospitality and a space of belonging outside of the existing honor and shame structure that was in place. Jesus' miracle is intentional as it highlights excess of life and the overflowing love of God. Jesus' miracle is good news. Jesus did not choose to hoard the wine once he made more to ensure there was enough. Jesus filled 6 jars. And each of these 6 jars, each jar held approximately 15 to 25 gallons. That's anywhere from 90 to 150 gallons of wine total. That's a lot of wine, folks. And that's a lot to share. And it was meant to be shared. And yet it's in these moments that our good news can get distorted and used to manipulate and further propagate power and control. Narratives that share we must tend to our own, perpetuate fear and scarcity, rather than the joy of giving, the joy of receiving, the joy of abundance. Catherine Matthews Huey used to write for UCC Worship Ways, and way back in 2010, she wrote this: "It seems that we are so spiritually hungry and thirsty that we fill our lives with material stuff in a futile attempt to satisfy those needs, and we even shape a distorted gospel, a prosperity gospel that says that God actually wants us to have all this stuff, that God wants us to live our lives this way." That's a very different kind of abundance than the kind Jesus shares. Very different than the kind that God gave us at creation, and it invariably leaves us sitting hungry in the midst of excess and longing for the abundance of God, thirsting for God's grace. The first public miracle that Jesus performs, turning water into wine after his baptism, causes us to pause and assess, what else can this Jesus do, and how can I be a part of what Jesus does? How can we be a part of subverting a dominant message of oppression? Now, the last thing we need is for someone to be a disgrace at a wedding. Jesus reminds us that we can take what is before us, perhaps containers used for purifying, and fill them up to the brim with the water of hope, love, justice, resilience, and grace, and even joy. Jesus is known for showing up in miraculous ways on more than one occasion in the simple day-to-day activities, drawing water from wells, preparing food, tending sheep, and trying to figure out what to do when the wine runs out of a wedding celebration. This Lent, let us remember that the good news really is good news. It is joyful, like fine wine saved for a celebration. It grows like a mustard seed and smells like perfume poured from an alabaster jar. It tastes like bread passed endlessly through a hungry crowd. It sounds like laughter and feels like mercy. The good news is alive in the world. You just gave me examples of it. Tell me something good. Last November, the Today Show shared this video clip that Nolan's going to make work for us in just a second, of high schoolers in a small Ohio school district responding to a simple prompt: share something good that's happened today. After it was filmed and posted, this video quickly went viral due to the surprising joy within the students' responses. Perhaps we could replicate this exercise in our church throughout Lent as one of many joyful ways to ground our community in good news.